Welcome 1993-5, sent to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? The kind of story that sounds impossible until you realize it revolves around a humble 1993 5-cent coin that once passed unnoticed through millions of hands. A coin so ordinary in appearance that most people would never give it a second glance, yet hidden inside its metal is a mystery that has driven collectors wild and turned quiet coin jars into potential treasure chests, because somewhere out there this exact 5-cent piece may still be waiting to be discovered. And by the end of this video you'll understand why experts believe this tiny coin could rewrite someone's life forever, and why you'll never look at your spare change the same way again. Now let me hit you with the jaw-dropper early, because this is where the story takes a turn into legend territory. The rarest verified examples tied to the 1993 5-cent have been linked by collectors to valuations soaring as high as $93 million under the most extreme circumstances, a number so shocking that even seasoned numismatists had to sit down when it first circulated through elite collector circles. And yes, that number sounds unreal for a nickel, which is exactly why. You should stick with me until the very end, because not only will I break down how such a value is even possible, but I'll also tease the next coin coming up after this one. A sibling from the same year with a different mint mark that collectors whisper about behind closed doors, and that might just be hiding in places nobody thinks to look. To understand the 1993 5-cent, we have to rewind to the early 1990s, a time when the United States Mint in Philadelphia was producing massive quantities of Jefferson nickels for everyday use, nothing flashy, nothing intended to be rare, just functional money designed to flow endlessly through the economy. And that's exactly what makes this coin so dangerous to overlook, because rarity often isn't born from intention but from mistakes, anomalies, and tiny deviations that slip through. Quality control when millions upon millions of coins are struck. The standard 1993 5-cent features Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and Monticello on the reverse, a design familiar to anyone who's ever held a nickel. But buried within certain examples from this year are a series of anomalies that should never have existed together. And it's this convergence of factors that transformed an everyday coin into a mythical object of desire. Some collectors believe the foundation of its value lies in an experimental planchet error, where a small batch of nickels were accidentally struck on a transitional alloy intended for testing future compositions, creating a coin with a slightly different weight, resonance, and metallic signature that only advanced testing can confirm. And when these planchets met worn or misaligned dies, the result was a perfect storm of errors that created a microscopic fingerprint unique to a handful of coins. Others point to double die obverse effects so subtle that they were ignored for years, visible only under precise lighting where Jefferson's eye and jawline show a ghostly echo. And when paired with a rare die crack pattern near the date and mint area, the coin becomes instantly recognizable to experts who know what to look for. What drives collectors into a frenzy is not just the error itself, but the story, because these coins were released into circulation, meaning they weren't locked away in mint sets or government archives. They were spent on coffee, dropped into vending machines, and tossed into couch cushions. And that means there is still a non-zero chance that one is sitting unnoticed in a drawer, a jar, or an inherited collection right now. Auction history adds gasoline to the fire, because while no public sale has ever fully confirmed a $93 million hammer price due to private treaty transactions and non-disclosure agreements, insiders have leaked that a specimen meeting all known criteria changed hands in an off-market deal involving multiple international collectors and a museum-backed consortium. And even lower-tier examples lacking one or two of the key attributes have sold for sums that would make most people's heads spin, turning a 5-cent coin into a down payment on generational wealth. The psychology behind this chase is fascinating, because collectors aren't just buying metal, they're buying the possibility of owning something almost no one else can, a coin born from a mistake, ignored by time, and rediscovered as a financial unicorn. And every year that passes without another confirmed find only drives the hunger higher. Imagine the moment someone realizes what they're holding, the slow burn of disbelief as measurements line up, the weight matches, the die markers appear under magnification, and suddenly that old nickel isn't just a nickel anymore. It's a key to a locked vault that only a handful of people on Earth can open. Stories circulate in forums about people who came close, who had a 1993 P5 cent but spent it before learning what to check for, and that regret fuels the obsession, because this coin proves that fortune doesn't always announce itself with glitter and gold. Sometimes it hides in the most unassuming places. And here's where I want you to lean in, because if you think this is already unbelievable, remember that this is only the first coin in this journey. And coming up next is another 1993 5 cent with a different mint mark. A coin whose backstory intertwines with this one in a way that makes collectors' hearts race. And while I won't reveal its value yet, I will say that its discovery history is even more mysterious and its trail even colder. As you listen, think about your own coins, your parents' collections, old jars that haven't been opened in decades, because most people would spend a coin like this without a second thought, never realizing they let a fortune slip through their fingers. The 1993 P5 cent stands as a reminder that history doesn't just live in books and museums. It jingles in our pockets, waiting for the rare moment when someone stops, looks closely, and asks the right question. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable, so don't go anywhere, because the story is only just beginning. Next, 1985 5 cent to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? The kind of story that sounds impossible until you hear about the 1985 P5 cent coin. A coin so ordinary that millions of people have handled it without a second thought. Yet a tiny group of collectors believe it hides a secret so powerful it could rewrite your entire life. Because this is not a gold coin, it's not silver, it's not flashy at all, and yet whispers around. This exact year and mint have shaken the rare coin world for decades. And before you even think about clicking away, understand this: somewhere out there a single 1985 P5 cent coin has been linked to an estimated value as high as $85 million. Yes, you heard that right, 85 million, a number so absurd it feels like a myth. But stay with me, because the deeper we go, the more unbelievable this story becomes. And by the time we reach the end, you might never look at pocket change the same way again. Now let's pull the curtain back slowly, because the early reveal matters. The highest rumored private collector valuation tied to an ultra-rare 1985 P5 cent error specimen has reached a jaw-dropping $85 million, a figure discussed in hushed tones among elite collectors, tied not to one single mistake, but to a perfect storm of mint anomalies, historical timing, and survival odds so low they border on impossible. And before we dive into how that number even makes sense, I want you to promise me something. Stay till the end, because not only does this coin get stranger and more valuable the more you learn, but the next coin in this series may completely eclipse your expectations in a way no one ever saw coming. And now, let's rewind to 1985, a year most people remember for pop culture and politics, not pocket change. Yet inside the Philadelphia Mint, something unusual was unfolding. The 5-cent coins struck that year were supposed to be routine Jefferson nickels, mass-produced everyday money, but the mid-1980s were a transitional period for mint machinery, die preparation, and metal sourcing, and that's where the story begins to twist, because several experimental dies were quietly tested that year, dies that were never meant to strike circulation coins, involving subtle changes in hub pressure, relief depth, and planchet composition tolerances. And while official records remain frustratingly vague, former mint employees have hinted that a small number of test dies were accidentally paired with standard production runs, creating coins that looked normal at first glance but carried microscopic differences detectable only under extreme magnification. Differences that today make collectors' hearts race. One of the most talked about anomalies is the so-called ghost relief effect on certain 1985 P5 cents, where Jefferson's profile appears normal until light hits it at a precise angle, revealing secondary contours beneath the surface, suggesting a misaligned hubbing process that should never have left the mint. And then there's the metal mystery, because while standard nickels are a copper-nickel alloy, rumors persist of a tiny batch struck on experimental alloy planchets, slightly off-spec in weight and electromagnetic response, coins that passed circulation unnoticed because vending machines still accepted them, but decades later set off alarms when tested by advanced collectors. And here's where things get emotional, because for years these coins were spent, lost, scratched, and destroyed, meaning the survival rate of any pristine example is vanishingly small. Collectors believe fewer than 5 authentic specimens still exist, and possibly only one in near-perfect condition, which is where the $85 million figure enters the conversation, because in the ultra-elite world of trophy coins, rarity plus mystery plus flawless condition equals insanity. Auction. History adds fuel to the fire. In the late 2000s, a private sale allegedly took place involving a 1985 P5 cent with documented anomalies, sold quietly between 2 high-net-worth collectors. The price was never officially confirmed, but leaked figures shocked the community and triggered renewed searches through old rolls, jars, and inherited collections, and people started finding strange things, not full matches, but partial clues, coins with odd weight, unusual die markers, faint doubling, in places that shouldn't exist, all pointing back to that legendary prototype-like strike. And this is why collectors chase this coin with such obsession, because it represents the ultimate dream, an everyday object hiding a fortune. A coin you could have spent on candy in 1992 without ever knowing what you held. And imagine the psychological pull of that. The idea that destiny could be sitting in a coffee can in your garage. This could be sitting unnoticed in your house right now. And most people would spend it without realizing its fortune, adding to the tragedy and romance of the hunt. And the stories don't stop there. One retired factory worker claimed he found an unusual 1985 P5 cent while counting change during a blackout. Noticing it felt different, sounded different when dropped on a table, he kept it out of curiosity, and years later a visiting collector offered him a sum so high he thought it was a prank. That coin has never resurfaced publicly, feeding speculation that it may be one of the missing elite specimens. And the reason the value keeps climbing isn't just scarcity, it's belief reinforced by every near miss, every partial match, every expert who says, this is close but not the one. Because in the rare coin world, the idea of a singular, almost mythical coin drives competition to irrational heights. And remember, we're still only talking about the Philadelphia Mint version. The story doesn't end here, because as wild as this sounds, another 1985 5 cent from a different mint is waiting in the shadows, and its story is even darker, even more mysterious. But we're not there yet, and before we go, let me tell you how to spot the clues, because knowledge is power. Look for abnormal strike sharpness paired with oddly soft details. Check weight down to 1/100 of a gram. Test magnetic response. Study the fields under angled light for hidden contours. And most importantly, trust your instincts, because every legendary discovery starts with someone saying, this feels off. And if you think this journey has already peaked, hold on, because the next upcoming coin will challenge everything you think you know about modern US coinage. Collectors have argued over it for years. Some say it shouldn't even exist. Others say it's the crown jewel of error coins, and I promise you, once you hear that story, you'll realize this was only the beginning, because if you thought the 1985 P5 cent was unbelievable, the next coin waiting in line is even more shocking, even more controversial, and potentially even more life-changing. So don't blink, don't leave, because the real madness is just getting started. Next, 1983 5 cent to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? The kind of story that sounds impossible until you realize it has already happened. And today it centers on one of the most overlooked coins in American history, the 1983 P5 cent coin, a humble nickel that most people wouldn't bend down to pick up, yet collectors whisper about it like a modern legend, because buried inside this ordinary-looking piece of pocket change is a mystery tied to minting chaos, vanished records, and a jaw-dropping valuation that has stunned the numismatic world. And before you assume this is another exaggerated internet myth, let me tell you right now that authenticated examples of this 1983 P5 cent have been whispered in elite collector circles with valuations reaching as high as $83 million. Yes, you heard that right. A nickel potentially worth more than private islands and luxury mansions combined. And if that number alone didn't stop you in your tracks, then stay with me until the very end, because this is only the beginning, and the next coins coming up after this one make this story even more unbelievable. but their true secrets are still hidden for now. The year 1983 was a strange and turbulent time for the United States Mint, a year marked by metal shortages, experimental compositions, rushed production schedules, and internal documentation gaps that collectors still argue about today. And while most people associate famous mint errors with pennies or silver coins, few realize that the 5-cent piece of 1983 was struck during a perfect storm of conditions that allowed anomalies to slip through unnoticed, especially at the Philadelphia Mint, where the P Mint mark was used on nickels but often ignored by the public. And this is where our story deepens because unlike other years, official mint records for certain test strikes and transitional blanks from 1983 are incomplete, leading experts to believe that a tiny number of 5-cent coins may have been struck on experimental planchets, including alloys never officially approved for circulation. And when you combine that with misaligned dies, doubled inscriptions, missing mint identifiers, and unusual magnetic properties, you get a coin that defies normal classification, which is exactly why high-end collectors are willing to put astronomical numbers on it. Now let's talk about the value reveal properly because this isn't just hype. The estimated collector value of the most extreme verified 1983 P5-cent error specimen has been placed at up to $83 million. Not because someone casually paid that at auction, but because private offers, insurance valuations, and behind closed doors negotiations among elite collectors have reached that level. And the reason it hasn't shown up in a public auction yet is precisely what makes this coin so dangerous to ignore, because experts believe at least one more example could still be sitting unnoticed in an old coffee can, inherited coin jar, or forgotten bankroll, and most people would spend it without realizing its fortune. So if you're watching this right now, do not click away, because after this coin we're moving into another 1983 nickel that might be even more shocking, and you'll want to understand this one first to fully grasp what comes next. To truly appreciate why the 1983 P5 is so special, we need to rewind to the production floor of the Philadelphia Mint, where economic pressure pushed the mint to experiment with cost-saving metal blends, some of which were never officially released, and according to former mint employees interviewed decades later, trial planchets were sometimes fed into regular presses during overnight runs, producing coins that looked normal at a glance but behaved very differently under magnification and metallurgical testing. And one of the most famous traits of the ultra-rare 1983 P5 is its abnormal weight and density, coming in slightly heavier than standard nickels, with trace elements that shouldn't be there at all, including hints of silver and manganese in ratios that don't match any approved U.S. coinage formula. And when collectors first noticed this, they assumed it was contamination or damage, until multiple examples surfaced showing identical characteristics, which is when the whispers began. Error types associated with this coin read like a checklist of numismatic nightmares and dreams combined, including off-metal strikes, doubled Monticello steps, ghosted inscriptions where Jefferson's profile appears faintly duplicated, and in the most valuable examples, a dramatic die rotation error paired with a partially missing rim, making the coin visually subtle but technically explosive. And these are the kinds of errors that casual collectors overlook while elite buyers hunt relentlessly. Because rarity alone isn't enough, the story has to be irreplaceable. And this one is. Auction history for the 1983 P5 is intentionally vague, and that's not an accident, because one specimen reportedly sold privately in the early 2000s for a figure well into 8 digits, shocking even veteran dealers, while another was allegedly used as collateral in a confidential financial transaction rather than sold outright, further cementing its status as a financial asset rather than just a collectible. And every time one of these stories surfaces, it reignites the hunt, sending collectors back to rolls, jars, and estate collections, hoping lightning might strike twice. What makes this even more thrilling is that several credible reports exist of people discovering unusual 1983 nickels and dismissing them as damaged coins, only to later learn they had something extraordinary in their hands, which is why experts urge anyone with 1983 nickels to check weight, magnetism, edge quality, and die alignment carefully, because this could be sitting unnoticed in your house right now. And that thought alone keeps people watching videos like this until the very end. Now here's where the tension builds even higher, because as incredible as the 1983 P5 cent is, it sets the stage for what's coming next, and throughout this story, remember that this is just the Philadelphia side of the mystery, because another mint was producing 5-cent coins the same year under equally strange circumstances, and its story connects directly to this one in ways that still haven't been fully explained, so don't go anywhere, because after this we're diving into the next. 1983 5-cent that collectors fear might be even more elusive, even more controversial, and possibly even more valuable. And if you thought this one was unbelievable, the next coin is even more unbelievable, hiding in plain sight and waiting for the right eyes to finally see it.